lanes if possible. Third, proceed with caution. These three simple steps can be the difference between life and death.
Pastor, if you would start speaking, please.
Do the right thing. Slow down. Move over.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. What a great
financial support in the airing of this message.
view of a day when you're mind.
WCPT.
Okay, and you know what I need you to start doing, Pastor?
We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I need you to start pushing us out on social media, and if you could announce on Sundays.
Sarcoma.
So we can continue to build the audience.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Starting this Sunday, honey.
Huh? I'll send you something.
I said starting this Sunday. Yes.
Okay, great. And thank you, Jewel. Hang in there, hon.
6,000 people lose their lives just
Okay.
Thanks, you too.
New therapies are desperately needed.
Hey,
Research
I'm gonna do that.
is necessary to find a cure for a cancer that you probably didn't even know existed.
That is what we have to do.
Awareness, advocacy, and research. The Sarcoma Foundation of America is determined to help those affected by this.
Herschel Walker race is just a lot.
Whose lives are forever changed by a word they have never heard before. Please help us in the fight to find the cure for sarcoma. For more information on sarcoma and the work of the Sarcoma Foundation of America, please go to curesarcoma.org.
Hi, I'm Lavina. I'm 7 years old and I'm blind. I love gymnastics, piano, public speaking, and riding on the tour bike with my dad. You can help me live the life I want.
Help Ravina and other blind people by making a tax-deductible donation of your used car, truck, or almost anything with wheels to the National Federation of the Blind.
How much time do we have, Jewel?
Ensure a brighter future for blind children and adults.
We have a minute and a half.
Okay, great.
That's 855-659-9314. Or visit carshelpingtheblind.org. That's carshelpingtheblind.org. We will arrange to have the donated vehicle picked up and provide you with a tax-deductible receipt. And if you know someone who is blind that can use our help, email nfb@nfb.org.
Blindness is not holding me back at all. Donate today.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes? Their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job?
Spending money to help feed his little sisters?
Or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity?
30 seconds.
Okay.
Or a retiree who fell ill?
It's hard to choose between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at I Am Hunger in America.
Stand by.
Okay.
Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Bank Strong, and the Ad Council.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children we can. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Thursday, November 17th, 2022, 1 week before Thanksgiving, praying for all of those Americans who might not be able to at least have the turkey on Thanksgiving Day. 1 in 4 Americans will not be able to have Thanksgiving in that way. We have to be mindful of that, and those are the times in which we find ourselves living, and that is part of the fight as we are still in the midst of the 2022 midterm season. Indeed, the 2022 midterm season is going to intersect with the 2024 election season. As we look at what's happening in Georgia today, that is what we're going to be doing, and we're also going to be looking at digging deeper on former President Trump's chances to win. Indeed, he is considered to be the front runner in the Republican space. And I want to know why that is, because the mainstream media, corporate media, I'm going to call them corporate media, and just pardon me as I kind of trip over that and really retrain myself. And I want to thank Jim Narakis and Janine Jackson and Bryce Green and all of our people at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting for helping us to correct that. You know, the fact is, former President Trump's people are winning, everybody. That is not my wish. Those are the numbers. The overwhelming majority of his candidates actually won. See, the thing is, if you don't know what you're fighting, you can't win the fight. So acting like when you look at these razor thin margins in these races and all of that, you have to understand that this man has been winning. That is why he had the sheer unmitigated gall to announce that he is going to run. He's going to do that because he has people in place all over the country he has endorsed who won. Who won? We're going to be talking about that today because the corporate media are misleading all us and they're trying to reshape the narrative so you think the opposite. Please don't do that. That means if you want Medicare and Medicaid to survive, if you don't want it to be privatized, if you want health care for all people, if you want an agenda that is more closely aligned with the Democratic agenda, we've got to get more people registered to vote. You've got millions of high school students, seniors, who should be registered by this fall, by 2024. That's what needs to happen. Stop trying to look for people who've left you. They might come back, they might not. Taking these policies to the right, that's not going to work. It's not working. It's not. So let's talk about that today. Let's look at Trump's chances, everybody. I mean, really, beyond what they're saying in the corporate media space, because they're not telling the truth. What they're trying to do is shape the narrative for you and shape your thinking and make you think that we are not where we really are in a split nation. Yeah. So let's talk about that today, everybody. Let's talk about that today. And let's talk about Georgia and why it is so consequential, why Raphael Warnock, the sitting senator, who is being opposed vociferously by Herschel Walker, who is making statements that are just really stunning and embarrassing, quite frankly, but yet they're neck and neck in this race. So what's going on, everybody? What is going on? And why is it? And this is where we're seeing the voter restrictions. People are saying, we outvoted voter suppression. No, we didn't. No. Now you can't vote on Saturdays. I mean, they have restricted your access to the vote in Georgia. That is where you can see the margin of victory or defeat. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let us talk about this. Hey, Carol down there on the left coast, and Francis, and Andre, and Mark, and all my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook channel. So let us get right to it, everybody. Let's get right to it. I have to see. Looks like my camera was unplugged. I have to get my face back up here. So we're going to do that. But let's get to it. Thursday, November 17th, 2022. The NBA, the Pelicans 124, the Bulls 110, the Timberwolves 126, the Magic 108. And in Chicago, we're going to have a high of 34 degrees today, snow showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 27 degrees, snow showers. In the NFL, okay, get your popcorn ready for NFL Thursday night football. The Titans versus the Packers. All right, pulling for the Packers, of course, in this part of the country. In the NHL, the Blues 5, Chicago 2, and the Penguins will be playing the Wild tonight, everybody. Are you registered to vote down in Georgia? You can't get registered right now, but, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it. Let's get right to it on the Santita Jackson Wait to see more of these pictures, and I can't wait for us to get back to the moon. What about you? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Republicans will win the House of Representatives. It is now official, according to CNN, MSNBC, and other corporate media, including Fox, after passing the threshold of 218 seats needed for control of the chamber. What will that mean? Who will become the Speaker of the House? What role will Nancy Pelosi play? Indeed, she's going to make some kind of announcement today. We do not know what it is. It's falling short of the GOP's hopes of a red wave. They had hoped to have about 60 extra seats at least. That did not happen. The GOP one, on the other hand, would create an environment where both parties are more productive than we might think, according to different reports, because different compromises might have to be made. But what kind of investigations will go forward? We're going to see soon. Amazon has confirmed it has begun laying off employees a few days after multiple outlets reported the e-commerce giant planned to cut around 10,000 people this week. Meta announced 11,000 job cuts. Wow. What do you think about that, everybody? These folks they're hurting in that industry. What does that mean? Or are they reorganizing? What does this mean? The student accused of killing 3 University of Virginia football players was denied bail yesterday as chilling new details emerged of this murderous spree. The suspect was on a field trip Sunday with fellow UVA students to see a play in Washington, D.C., according to a university spokesperson. When the bus returned to the Charlottesville campus, the 22-year-old then opened fire on the bus, killing the 3 players. According to a witness, the suspect shot one of the 3 players while he was sleeping. The suspect is in custody and faces several charges. What happened there, everybody? Yale and Harvard law schools. Now, this is interesting. 2 of the premier law schools in the country announced they are parting ways with the U.S. News and World Report ranking system of the best law schools in the United States. The schools are bowing out after criticizing the publication's methodology, arguing that the list actively perpetuates disparities in law schools. Given the elite status of Yale and Harvard, the move is significant and could signal a greater shift away from college rankings. For years, policymakers and those working in higher education have dismissed the rankings, though they are still referenced by potential students and their families. Yeah, you need to, because it's interesting, many Harvard law students, when they come out, do not pass the bar the first time. Yeah, I know several of them who didn't. And so it's very interesting. And also, depending upon the kind of law that people practice, that determines really where you need to look. You know, if you want someone who can argue your case, you better go to Howard, and you better go to North Carolina Central, black schools. You better go to black law schools. You better look at UT, the University of Texas system, because they really produce top-notch litigators. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to what you do with what you've been given, the education that you got, and keep it moving. All right, everybody, we have got some good news today from Pastor Darius Brooks. Yes, that Darius Brooks, the Grammy Award-winning producer and songwriter. Your Will Is What's Best for Me, but the Tommies, all of that, they've been on tour all over the country. And we're so glad that he stops by and gives us some good news every Thursday. The Great Central Church in Westchester, Illinois. You can go get food there. Pastor, let me just ask you this very quickly before you get into the good news, just very, very quickly. 1 in 4 Americans are going to go past Thanksgiving this year because they cannot afford to buy the turkey. They cannot afford to buy the meal. Will you be serving Thanksgiving dinner, or will you be serving meals this week, next week?
Absolutely, Santita. Good morning.
Good morning.
We started even last Tuesday. Yes, we will. Absolutely. All through this holiday season, we'll be serving every Tuesday from 5 till 7 and every Wednesday for seniors, so they won't come out in the evening from noon till 2. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7, come hail or high water, and every Wednesday from 12 till 2, we'll be serving 7 different townships, and we're not going to turn no one away. So even if you're not in either of these 7 townships, if you come to Grace Central Church, you will leave with $200 to $300 worth of food, a full meal turkey. Oh, no, I promise you, it's a whole great deal. As a matter of fact, our lines are around the corner. We serve between 200 and 600 families almost each week. Everybody's in line, Comcast workers, everybody who work trucks, they come in their work trucks, landscapers, they come in their work vehicles coming to get food, and we are there to serve. We are service. And Santita, I love it. I love it. I love it. More importantly, I love God's direction. Santita, everything we need is in the Word of God, from love stories to murders, from Genesis to Revelation, rightly dividing God's Word. Every answer we need is in God's Word and in proper context of everything that we're dealing with and what we're doing, the ignorance of what we don't know, the smartness of what we need to know, the directions, every area in our lives, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, socially, culturally, verbally, sexually, professionally, personally. Listen to me, people of God. Every answer is in there. He says, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be open. He talked about him, not in this world. He says, be in the world, but not of the world. The good news, Santita, 1 Peter 2:9, as you can see, I'm on the road this morning. 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own position, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into a marvelous light. Santita, let's journey through the good news, I call it. If I had to use a thought today, I'd talk about God's word doesn't support our differences. God's word doesn't support our differences. You are a chosen race. A chosen race means a certain kind of people. He says we are a royal priesthood, people who operate in character and integrity. We help, we support, we love. A holy nation. Holy means sacred. That's important to us as believers. There's some things that are really sacred to us. That's what holy means. That don't mean long skirts and you doing everything right. It means that God's word and how we use him is important to us above everything in our hearts. He says we use this because we are a people for his position, which means the only way we can get some of these things done is because of the way our hearts are when it comes to him, even in our humanness. He says that we may proclaim excellencies of him, or how he would do things even in our humanness, who called us out of darkness. Here's a part I like, Santita, which is the way we see things, into a marvelous light, a place of excellence and order, so he can show us how to do this. Is it possible to give away and become richer? Is it also possible to hold on too tightly and lose everything? Proverbs 11:24. Yes, the liberal man shall be rich by watering others. He waters himself. You were created to assist others. Those who are good at assisting others are always able to see the bright side of others. Practicing the golden rule is not a sacrifice. It's an investment. Don't give till it hurts. Give because it feels good to give. It's really true that the good things you make happen for others, God today in 2022 still will make happen for you. Don't you get it twisted. Knowing that whoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, Ephesians 6:8. You grow spiritually to the extent you give out. Santita, this thing right there blessed my life. It's a spiritual thing that you grow. It's not the money and all this other stuff. By giving out, you also create room to grow in your heart. God doesn't support our differences. He supports like minds. The word of God shares with us to treat people as the way they should be treated. Did you hear what I said? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, Santita. That's what that really means. When you do these things, you will help them become what they could be. There's no better exercise for the heart than reaching down and lifting someone up after people have been around you. Do they feel better or worse? Bigger or smaller? Full of faith or full of fear? When you use God's word, the people you are assisting, you leave them better than you found them. But the clarity of understanding this, Santita, is that the people that you assist, you see their hearts. Make sure you see their hearts and look at their position. Look at their demeanor. They want to be assisted. It should receive, they should love, they should be accepted, and it should be appreciated. When you're giving to the wrong kind of people, the word says, don't give what's sacred to the dogs and don't feed your pearls to swine. I'm closing here. God's word doesn't support our differences. God's word supports like minds, meaning one is giving in a position and one is receiving in a position. It's clear. Believe it or not, some people you have to leave them where you found them versus trying to take them with you. You cannot be different. We have to be alike. Being different is in darkness. Being like-minded is that marvelous life God was talking about. Here, growth accomplishes some crazy, amazing things. Santita, you just said something a minute ago about victory or defeat, the margin of it. It's really like minds. The margin of victory or defeat are like minds. If we're going to win this thing, it needs to be like minds. If they going to win, defeat is going to be like minds. So people of God, with this thing Santita just got you talking about, either we're going to be like minds and do it and kill it, or they going to be like minds and do it and win it. All we got to do is make a choice, because God doesn't support our differences. His word only supports like minds.
Mine's like his. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine's like his. Mine's like his. And, really, and when you're flowing in the right direction, because, that's when everybody is winning. When everybody is winning. Mm-hmm. And that's the way the world was designed. Everybody is supposed to win. Everybody's supposed to win. My pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, said, I've never seen God make a mouth that God could not feed. No one should be hungry in this world. No one should be without food, clothing, shelter. So when that happens, when you see all of this poverty in the world, we're not in alignment with the highest power. We're not.
Right.
And we're not going to be blessed until we get there very quickly. I've got less than a minute. How can we get some food? 1 in 4 Americans will not be celebrating Thanksgiving this year. If you think you know someone who might not be celebrating, think about sharing, or certainly direct them to a church like Grace Central so that they can get something to eat. Your feeding schedule this weekend for next week, Pastor. 1 minute.
Tuesday from 5 till 7. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7 at Grace Central Church, gracecentral.net, gracecentral.net. And Wednesdays for seniors from noon till 2, gracecentral.net, Grace Central Church, gracecentral.net. Tuesday from 5 till 7 and Wednesdays from noon till 2. Every Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right. We love Pastor Brooks and beautiful First Lady Deborah Brooks, who left banking to take up this ministry with her husband. And of course, their daughter is in college. And one day we're going to have Pastor Brooks on to let you hear about his life, because his life truly is a testimony. The life that he's living right now is one that only could have been prayed into. And God has been so good. But as God has poured into Pastor Brooks, he pours into people, and the Lord continues to bless him and everyone who is near him, including myself. Love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. The Tommies, very quickly. When can we see the Tommies again? I got a few seconds.
Actually, with this Friday, we're at the Christ Universal Temple with 1390s giveaway toys. You guys, it's a free concert. It's going to be the concert, the Darius Brooks and the Tommy's reunion. And we're singing our new single, My Mind's Made Up 2.0, Santita. We're excited.
Okay.
Kim Stratton is going to be there. Lemmy Battles is going to be there. Pastor Mike Jr. is going to be there.
Okay, well, I'm going to have you back on Friday to pump it up. Gotta run to this break. Love you, everybody. Let's talk about President Trump and these numbers he keeps racking up, everybody. Let's be honest about this thing. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Okay, I'm sorry, Pastor Brooks. I had a hard out, so thank you so much.
No, look, I love you. You know I understand this thing.
Yes. So when I tell you I got a minute, I'm pushing. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Jonathan is in DC.
Yes, he's in DC doing his thing. It's it's orientation time. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So bless his heart.
I love it. God is amazing. He's amazing.
Well, just keep on praying for him and working with him, because he certainly needs the support.
Yeah. Well, he got that good, bad, right, or wrong, flaws and all. He got that. If they can do it, shoot, what?
Well, we want him to do it. We want him to do it the right way, right?
We have Attorney Patillo on.
Fantastic. Attorney Patillo, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm so glad that you're with us today. One of the things I want to peel this onion before we talk about Georgia, and we'll really talk about Georgia more in the next hour. We can just pivot. The corporate media are saying that Trump has lost and he's a loser. And it's just the numbers don't bear that out. Most of the people he endorsed won, right? I mean, and I'm not endorsing him. I'm just saying there's no way that Democrats will be prepared for the fight if they don't have the right information.
Yeah, and even if you think about all the races the Democrats did win, wait a minute,
I couldn't hear you.
Some people did lose when Democrats were able to flip them. They're still by razor thin margin. So
razor thin.
Democrats are just, not that the Democrats be blowing them out. It's that we're still 50-50.
It's just like, wait a minute, y'all. And all this rah we're hearing. I'm like, you're not going to get rid of him that easily. It's not going to happen like that. And all the donors are not going to support him. So what? Nobody cares about that. All you're doing is you're just blowing him up.
Yep.
Maybe that's the point. I don't know. But that certainly is the function. So I want to dig into that because, a couple of people objected to that. A couple of people objected to us even highlighting that. And I was like, why are you upset about that? It's just the truth. You don't need to get mad with me. Just, it's the truth. How are you going to fight this if you do not know?
Last night on after last night on Roland's show, Lauren Victoria Brooks said, we're not here to be White House comms. Like, it's not my job to carry the water of the administration. I don't know how people think it is.
That's all I'm trying to tell you. I mean, that's not my job. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you the information, John. So I go to Ballotpedia, everybody, and I find out what's going on. I just want the numbers.
Miss Jackson,
yes.
We have 30 seconds or so. All guests are on and ready to go.
Okay, who do we have now?
We have Attorney Patillo, Reverend Yuri, and Miss Wells.
Thank you. Okay, and if
you still have a caller waiting.
Oh, Pam, I'm going to go to her, and if you can get Attorney Hoffler up. I just sent you her number.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Stand by.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Can you believe it? We're a week away from getting that turkey. I cannot wait. I love it. Let's talk about the real narrative that has to come out of last week or this past week with the primaries. Not the primaries, the election, the midterm elections. The fact is Donald Trump, the former president, did far better than the corporate media are telling you. The only way that we're going to be able to be in this fight is to have the right information. Don't let people mislead you. Don't let them mislead you. It's absolutely wrong because most of the people that the former president endorsed won. Most of them won. We have to be clear on that so that we can know exactly what we're looking at. Okay, so let's talk about this. And we're going to talk about Georgia. Georgia is on our minds. We have got to figure out how we can win in Georgia, as Senator Warnock has had to join a suit filed by the Democrats because of voter restrictions. There are fewer opportunities, fewer days to vote. And we have got to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show. How do we really counter voter suppression and voter restrictions? Because that is what we are seeing right now in Georgia. You cannot get registered to vote right now in Georgia if you got inspired by the midterms. That's been shut down for you. You can't vote in many instances on Saturday. That's been shut down to you. There's a whole lot that's going on in Georgia, and we got to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show, because as goes Georgia, they're saying that that is the way much of the election will go throughout the country in 2024. Yeah, it's of tremendous consequence. So let's get to it. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Chaparral Celebrations by Us. We are so mindful of this wonderful food that you make, but we are also mindful of the fact that distressingly, 1 in 4 Americans will not be able to afford a meal, a Thanksgiving meal. They will be foregoing this holiday this year. So we are keeping them in our prayers, and we're going to vote about it and be about it so we can make sure that no one ever has to go without food, not just on Thanksgiving, but on any day. But you know, you've got these vittles, and I'm waiting for mine. What's going on, Miss Celebrations by Us?
Yes, Santita, we are prepping. We had a lot of corporate orders this week, but we are pushing them out, and we're getting ready for next week for all of those who have ordered for Thanksgiving, including yourself. So we're getting ready to get ready. So at Celebrations by Us, we are definitely preparing your turkey, your dressing, your mac and cheese, your greens, and your green beans. Let's not forget about our desserts, our banana pudding, peach cobbler, pound cakes, caramel cakes, red velvet cakes, German chocolate cake, whatever it is that you need for your holiday table. Don't hesitate to give us a call. Tomorrow is the last day that we're taking orders for the holiday of Thanksgiving, and then we're rolling right into Christmas. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Oh, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. So everybody, let's get to it. Let's talk about this election season in which we find ourselves. Before we get to Georgia, and we will get there, let's talk about what happened with former President Trump, who announced that he is running again. And people are saying, oh my goodness, this is a horrible thing that he's doing. And why? Because he's the big loser. He's got the big L on his forehead. No, that's not true. Trump's endorsees won 213 of the 240 races held on November 8th. That's an 86% success rate. You need to understand that. You need to understand that he won far more than he lost. He has people in place who have been elected, who are holding office or who will be holding office as of January, going into the 2024 campaign. His lowest win rate was in gubernatorial races where he endorsed 21 candidates. Of those races in Alaska, that remains uncalled, but of the 20 races where Ballotpedia knows the outcomes, 9 of his endorsees won. That's a 45% rate, but everything else was in the high 80s and 90s. Okay? His general election win rate was 86%. So you're not hearing that. You're hearing that what a loser he was. Everybody lost. That is not true. It's not. And we won't know how to get in this fight or be in this fight unless we know that, have that bit of information, for example. You need to understand what's happening in Georgia with the voter restrictions and the voter suppression. We're going to have Greg Palast back on here, and we're going to have him show that movie again and again and again, because there are fewer and fewer opportunities for you to vote in Georgia. But first, let's look at President Trump, former President Trump. Indeed, when Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, who's with us from Rainbow Push, pastor of the iconic Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland, indeed, his immediate predecessor is Senator Warnock. He held the pulpit just before Reverend Dr. Yeary did. And of course, the former president of the National Bar Association, legal analyst for Court TV, chair of Rainbow Push, attorney C.K. Hoffler. I want to start with you, though, Robert Patillo, because you can set the table. Because when people, I have to tell you, Reverend Dr. Yeary, when you mentioned this yesterday, that former President Trump won big in this cycle, a few people got angry with you. I just want you to know that. And then when you said something about the states, the cases that the states have levied against him, and you said, you can kind of push that to the side. So people got angry with you. And I just want us to be a lot more scientific in our approach to this. Okay? You don't have to hate President Trump in order to get him off the scene. You can't. That's not going to work. And hate is just too destructive anyway. You need to be scientific about this. You need to know how people are voting, and you need to know why they're voting the way that they're voting. When I was in that Cracker Barrel, and I talked about this story, Attorney Hoffler and Reverend Dr. Yeary and Attorney Patillo, as I come to you. When I went there with my father and his assistant, Mr. Shelley Davis, and Murray, who's been driving him and protecting him for years. White and black, young and old, poor working class people came out of that kitchen because they wanted to hug Reverend and kiss him and make sure that he was going. They wanted to see how he was moving because you've been in here before and we were worried about you, Reverend. And thank you for fighting for us. That's all I heard, Robert Patillo. It brought me to tears. I could not. When I came home, I just wept. I said, most of the money my father made, he's given away. But boy, in that moment, to have young and old, white and black, poor people come out and say, hey, thank you for fighting for us. It just meant so much. And my father's reaction was, if we could come together beyond race and all of these divisions that are sown, we could really make America and the world what it's supposed to be. So talk to me about Trump and this big loser reputation that the corporate media are pushing. And then, of course, I'm going to go to you, Reverend Dr. Yeary, and you, Attorney Hoffler. What about that? It's just not true.
Oh, absolutely. And let's understand, all this does continue to burnish Trump's image among his base as being a disruptor, as being a rabble-rouser, somebody who goes into the establishment and starts breaking those institutions down. And what we've seen is that his base is incredibly loyal, particularly to him. And that at the end of the day, the Republican Party now is a third party in this country. There's Democrats, there's the MAGA Party, and then there's some residue of Republicans being left as part of be trying to establish themselves as a political force. The Rupert Murdoch led media of the world is kind of the old news when in comparison to internet media. Some of these internet influencers have far bigger audiences than the cable news audiences, and they tap into that. And the fact that Trump's voters really believe, regardless of the scandals, regardless of the policies, regardless of the facts, that he is fighting for them and them alone, that he is going to be the voice for those poor and disenfranchised white voices around the country. They've taken white victimhood and turned it into a political movement, and that's an incredibly powerful force. So the idea that somehow that's going to disappear because of the midterm elections is fanciful. These people are not going where they're reloading and getting ready for the next opportunity.
And he's bringing black and brown people into it. Part of his campaign speech the other night, Attorney Patillo, was the fact that, and he didn't have to do this, but he's moving in a direction, and I think we need to pay attention. He said, I have increased black registration in the Republican Party. I have increased Latino registration in the Republican Party. And they have put community centers in the black and brown communities. They are swinging for the fences, Robert Patillo. We've got to pay attention. Do the Democrats have a response? Should they have a response? Should they pay attention to what he was saying? Because he didn't just drop that in the speech. Don't think he's just out here just running his mouth. He is not. This is scientific, Robert.
Well, even if you just need an example, look at Florida, where DeSantis won Miami-Dade County. If you're not going to pay attention to the writing that's on the wall, the grip of Democrats, just by saying the word Democrat on this new generation of people of color, is not as strong as it once was. And as long as the Republicans are going to continue to attempt to pry away African-American men, Latino voters, Asian American voters, the Democrats are going to have to find a response before they lose the entire generation and shift the political pendulum again.
Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, when you just brought up the numbers, some people got upset with you. But before I come to you, let me go to Pam. Pam, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning, Miss Pam.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you, and same to you and the family. Santita, before I go into my statement, I need to ask a question.
Okay, quickly.
Was the House, it seems like the House was in play for us, right? We could have won the House even with all the gerrymandering. Am I correct about that?
Well, gerrymandering always skews you away from the truth. And it's
sure.
And quite frankly, I think the House is far more reflective of, and it generally is, of where Americans are right now. Americans are all over the place because we are in a lot of pain. So, people are not voting for Trump just for white nationalist reasons. That's not it. Remember, in 2008, the economy actually collapsed. People are still mad about that. And the establishment really tried to tamp down the discussion on that. They even changed the number of calls that could come through the switchboard at Congress. Did you know that?
Sure.
Over that weekend.
I had heard
that weekend, Pam, you used to be able to get unlimited numbers of calls through the switchboard at the House, at the U.S. Congress for the House and the Senate. Over that weekend, when Goldman Sachs told America, I need this money, and if you don't get it, I'm gonna shut down your economy. Do you know they changed? They restricted the number of calls that you could get through. Unbelievable.
Well, I needed to know that because I feel like I'm not sure that the Democratic Party fought hard enough or strategically enough for the House. So now we know so now I almost feel like, and this is just me being very simplistic with this, but I feel like hate and racism won in the House. And I feel like I know now what we're going to get is a lot of legislation that is bipartisan, which just to me rings to say, well, it's not going to be all that we could have gotten for the people. Or we're going to get a lot of this is the best we could do legislation. And so I think there was so much at stake. And now we're going to have to pay a price. Lastly, let me say this.
Well, I tell you what, we only pay a price. Wait.
Okay, sure.
We only pay a price when we don't raise our voices. Trust me, you can bend the vote of someone who is ardently opposed to your views. If you call and let them know, if you don't vote the way I need you to vote, you are out of office. Wow. See, remember, that's what Ahmaud Arbery's family did. They've got people voted out of office down in Brunswick, Georgia. So you have to keep fighting. If we want a democracy, if we want a republic, just wait a minute, a republic, not even a democracy. That means we all have to be registered to vote, and we all have to vote. That's what has to happen.
Well, I'm in total agreement, and I'm just going to go back to something I remember Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. fought for. He was one of the first people that fought for getting young people registered to vote. I clearly remember that.
And he's been arguing for registering high school seniors to vote. He's been doing that for 50 years. But very quickly, I need to get your comments so I can get the comments from everybody else.
Okay, last thing I want to say, he also talked about statehood for Washington, D.C.
Yeah, he was a shadow senator, you remember.
Trying to increase our power. So, Santi, where do we go from now? How do we negotiate this House?
We continue to do that, and you continue to press the Democrats to press for D.C. statehood. And should Puerto Rico want statehood, they should have it too. And should the U.S. Virgin Islands want statehood, they should have it too. They should not just be non-voting delegates. You need to have Kim Teehee, who is a Cherokee representative. We've been waiting 187 years for them to be seated in the U.S. House of Representatives. They should not just be non-voting delegates. They should be full-on congresspersons in the U.S. House of Representatives. The U.S. House of Representatives is supposed to reflect the population of the United States, which means that it is supposed to be an infinitely larger body of people. It shouldn't be just 435. It is supposed to be adjusted to the population all the time. It has not been. So remember, minoritarian rule. Yeah, but see, minoritarian rule has been. Well, and we have to stop. We have to get involved, Pam. And we have to stop acting like we're powerless. So that's the answer.
No, I never concede power to the few because I know it is in the hands of the many, and we've had too many examples.
That's right.
Of that. So I'm disappointed, but yes, I'm gonna keep fighting, and yes, I'm supporting Senator Warnock. Yeah. And we're going to get him over that threshold.
And you know what? Let me tell you something. Be disappointed. You're disappointed in your husband, your partner, your wife, whatever. People get disappointed, and we hang on in there with them. Do we not? With your children.
Yeah, we do.
Nieces and nephews, godchildren. It does not matter. Your job. Get over being disappointed. We're grown people. Okay?
Yes.
All right.
And God is still on the throne.
Honey, and look, I knew it'd make you giggle when I made it personal. How about that? You ain't gonna leave that husband, that partner, just because you're mad with him or her. You're not gonna do it. Love you.
Love you too, Santita.
Reverend Dr. Yeri, you live with disappointment every day. Oh, and you got people a little hot under the collar yesterday, Pastor.
Well, good morning, Santita.
Did I make it a little personal for you?
Good morning to you guests. All I can say is now you can appreciate how my members feel on Sunday morning. My job is not to lull you into some stupor, disconnected from the reality of your condition, where now you feel absolutely powerless to affect change. So welcome to a little bit of a sample of Douglas Memorial Community Church on Sunday morning. Now, let's get back to it. At the end of the day, the problem with carbon monoxide is it is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. By the time the effects have set in, you are, for the most part, dead. And if we don't get real about what's really in the data, if we don't start looking at not just what folks tell us the numbers say, but really understand what the numbers mean, then we'll come away thinking we're in a different position than we are, and we're going to look up and be in a world of hurt. Here's why this is important. If you mentioned Ballotpedia, I think everybody should look at it. It is I think the most comprehensive tracking of election-related data at the state and federal level, and it is quite helpful. If you look at the look back on Donald Trump's influence in political outcomes in terms of his endorsements, it wasn't just 2022. This is not an anomaly that these numbers were so significant. Prior years reflect kind of the same trend. And so the thing we have to be aware of is not just the numbers of endorsements that he made and those candidates won, but where they were. These are offices across the political spectrum at all levels of government.
Well, up and down the ballot, right? Up and down the ballot.
Up and down the ballot.
Wait a minute. The length, up and down, and from side to side.
Here's why that's critical, right? He is setting up the infrastructure for the influence for his plans in terms of how government should operate. That's actually how you build a movement. Now, we may not like what the movement is, but we cannot deny that there's a movement. And I don't care. You saw Vice President Pence do a town hall last night. You heard all of the feedback about whether or not they think the former president should have run. And yes, I did talk about the fact that he's not afraid of state lawsuits. He may not read much, but he listens to the key points of whatever folks are telling him. And the truth of the matter is that the disqualifier, the reason you're going to have disruption now into this process of looking at the documents at Mar-a-Lago, looking at the January 6th commission, is because that's where the real threat is. It's in the writing of the statute. And the statute that's relevant, it's not whether or not the documents he had were classified. It's whether or not he possessed government documents at all. And if he were to be found guilty of that, the penalty is an automatic, absolute, permanent disqualification from holding public office. That's why you see him making the endorsements, pushing, and how he stacked the courts to make sure that for the interpretation of the law that he would want to see applied, he wanted to make sure that there was some ideological consistency. And so whether we like it or not, I mean, at the end of the day, the saying ouch is indicative of two things. One, there may be some injury, but also it's the process of healing. And if we don't acknowledge the pain where we are and really start giving voice to it and talking about what we're going to do about it, then we'll sit here and go through another 2 years of defying basic math when we say, oh, the upper chamber has a majority. 50-50 is not a majority. It's a tie. But if you hold your caucus together and the vice president gets to levy a vote, then you can break the tie. So, yes, you have tie-breaking capacity. But if you can't hold your caucus together because there's an ideological split, then now what you have is chaos in your party, and now you're not going to get anything done. So it's going to be an interesting 2 years. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of truth. But the truth of the matter is Donald Trump ain't going nowhere. And everybody in the media spectrum knew it, but they tried to, it was like, well, I don't want to lock in on showing his speech.
No, stop. They lied. No, they lied. And so when he says fake news, he's right. And that is why most Americans do not trust corporate media, because they lie all the time, and they need to stop it. And we need to stop accepting being lied to. And you need to call them out on it, Todd.
Here's what they did. I channel surfed the other night. So they would have a split screen, but they wouldn't carry the content. You'd have to look for somebody. Right. They take excerpts because they're all trying to figure out how to frame the president's reemergence. He's coming back, but they don't necessarily want to lock in yet. He doesn't care. As long as they were watching and monitoring him, he is putting the movement in place. And whether you like it or not, you might want to find out what he's really doing and listen to what he's really saying, because Donald Trump is coming back in 2024, and everybody in Washington knows it.
Darling, he's already here. And CK, we're going to hear from you on the other side of the break. He is already here. And the question is why? What do people who are voting for him, what is it that they want? What are they looking for? We might even be surprised. There might even be some points of commonality. At the end of the day, 1 in 4 Americans will not have Thanksgiving next week because they cannot afford the meal. Most Americans can't go to the emergency room. Most Americans are going to go into bankruptcy if they get sick, and they have good insurance. The public school system, academic and vocational, is being collapsed on us. If you want to go to the University of Chicago as an undergrad, or NYU or Princeton, you're going to have to pay $100,000 for an undergrad for 1 year. Now, who's that locking in and who's that locking out? That's not the American dream. That is a nightmare. This is Europe Part 2. That's not, we didn't sign up for that over here. So come on, everybody. I want the truth, so I know the tools that I need to put in my box to fight. And you cannot fight if you think Trump has lost. You can't fight. You have no idea what we're dealing with out here. So come on, everybody, let's talk about this. And what's going on in Georgia? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this. And let's deal. What did you say, Todd? You hate to be the bearer of truth. Back in just a minute. Yeah. I mean, what is this? I was like, don't get mad with him. Would you just look at the numbers here? Todd? Hello?
Yeah, I'm looking at the breakdown by
the general election rate, 86%.
Look, the columns. one general, one primary, one general, one general, one general, one general, and they're up and down. I think the highlight, and here's where the media has distorted the picture, is they had only attached President Trump's endorsements to candidates who were problematic.
That's it.
They were problematic to begin with. But the ones that were less curious to the media were certainly up and down, overwhelmingly. I mean, his numbers are off the chart. So, look,
88% and 90%, and your people are winning and running. No. See, CK, my thing is this is not about my wish list. This is my to-do list. I got to see what's up. And for us not to know that he has people not just on the ballot, he has people in office now, CK and Robert. I mean, so that's why I had to call you back, Todd, because I said, wait a minute, Pastor Todd.
I'm sorry I didn't quote the Bible. I just gave statistics. I know it's kind of problematic.
Oh my gosh. I mean, because see, I pull these things down because when I say these things, I have to tell you, my father gets a little nervous because he's like, oh, what are you saying? What are you doing? I'm like, Dad, I'm just pulling out the facts, which is what I learned to do from you. To see, my father, he's my daddy, not my dictator. He does not mind the things that I have to say as long as I guess. He said, if you can prove your point, okay, I'm with you. I might not agree with you, but I can respect your argument. And that's where we are. So
absolutely,
don't let these people continue to lie to you. I mean, because you would think that Joe Scarborough didn't come in with Newt Gingrich, who completely reshaped American politics. All this anger and whatnot that we see in American politics today, he was part of that. You wouldn't think so now, unless you hear him go on a rant. I mean, these are people I like. I've met them. They're nice. But they're misrepresenting to you. I mean,
yeah.
It's just Robert, CK, we're not being told the truth. And that just makes me go, are you serious right now? So everybody, call us at 773-763-9278. Okay. And Attorney Hoffler, I'm going to come to you. And I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to say your things. I know you are running today. You there, CK? But keep talking because we're on Facebook right now and YouTube.
Okay. No, I do have to run, but I'm just always so excited, Santita, for however much time I can to be here with you. This is the thing. Sometimes we have to use our common sense. We know that the Republicans took over the House. So that tells us that on some level there was some kind of victory because they are going to be a majority position in the House. And what we need to really think about is what does that mean? That means that every single thing known to mankind that they object to, that the Biden administration has done, they're going to challenge, investigate. They're going to investigate the Justice Department. They're going to investigate the hearing. They're going to investigate everything that they can, I believe, to be, in my impression, obstructionist. But they legitimately feel that they have a right to do that because they're saying, it's fair. It's fair play. They want to find out if President Trump can speak there. All those things. So I think it's not the win they wanted, for sure, because they wanted to take over the Senate. But they did not, it's not a complete loss. And we have to look in the weeds and see where they gained momentum.
CK, that's my only point. For us to think that they just lost, they got creamed. I'm like, no. Where they won by razor-thin margins. And where they lost by razor-thin margins. But where they won, they won. You got it. You got to respect game. And you need to know game.
Right. Well, but Santita, on the other hand, I always say it's sort of like the bar exam. I hate to even bring that up, but I've been a lawyer for so many years.
Don't do it.
I know you talk about that. I know what it brings back. People who pass the bar pass by a couple points. People who fail the bar fail by a couple points. So it's not it's just, and those points are so vague. And ultimately, if you fail, you take it again and you pass. I mean, that's usually how it works. But a win is a win. And even though they only lost by a couple points, they did lose in terms of the U.S. Senate, and they did lose some races that they just thought they had in the bag. But having said that, we must note that they have the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. That's the body that will handle the impeachment hearings, if there are any impeachment hearings relative to the sitting president. Because, they're going to try to do a lot of things to level the playing field so that if Donald Trump is their candidate, he can win. And a way that they feel that they should do that is by throwing more dirt on President Biden, investigating Hunter Biden, doing all these types of things. And they're poised. They've already articulated that they're going to do that. So it's going to be, unfortunately, I was hoping, because I think there is a message by the American public that, look, y'all need to stop being stupid and work together.
Miss Jackson, we have 30 seconds. All guests are ready to go.
We'll listen to that message.
We have Attorney
Fancher.
Oops, sorry.
Attorney Fancher, Attorney Hoffler, Reverend Yeri, and Patillo.
Okay, great. All right, everybody. I'm sorry. I am running, getting to the rest of my show. Oh, boy, it's a lot. I hear you, but I got about 2 minutes.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get right to it. Let's talk. We've been talking about President Trump, former President Trump, and all of his wins and how we can fight back and win in 2024. But first, we have to get through December 6th. 2022, Raphael Warnock, Herschel Walker, Senator Warnock versus Citizen Herschel Walker. How is that going to work out? We have been hearing, I guess his discussion. He was talking about something or another, Herschel Walker, and it just made him sound like he was such an intellectual lightweight. It's just painful to watch all of this, but this is where we are right now in our politics. This is where we are, because this is for many people about holding on to that seat or gaining that seat in the U.S. Senate in Georgia. And they're dealing with voter suppression and voter restrictions, and we're going to be talking about that. Indeed, Raphael Warnock, the senator, has weighed in with the Democrats. He's joined a lawsuit to allow Saturday voting in the Georgia runoff. You already can't get registered. So Brian Kemp and the Secretary of State cut that off. Now, no voting on Saturday. I mean, are you serious? Got to talk about that. But, continue to give us some calls at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about what all of this means. What does all of this mean, actually? Call us at 773-763-9278. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 34 degrees, snow showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 27 degrees will be the high, snow showers. In the NBA, the Pelicans bested the Bulls, 124-110. The Timberwolves bested the Magic, 126-108. In the NFL, the Titans will be playing the Packers tonight for NFL Thursday night football. And in the NHL, the Blues 5, Chicago 2. Can't wait for Chicago to change the name of that team. Thank you very much. And the Penguins will be playing the Wild, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278. NASA's Artemis 1 mission that launched Wednesday has already shared a spectacular view of Earth on its way to the moon. We can also see, when we look at those pictures, we can look at climate change and its impact upon our environment. We can see just how much wider, for example, the Mississippi River is, how much land we've actually lost. The Mississippi, which runs from Minneapolis down to Mississippi, That's right, everybody. House Republicans. Well, they won the House of Representatives according to all major corporate media outlets. After passing the threshold of 218 seats needed for control of the chamber, the victory falls short of the GOP's hopes of more than 60 plus seats, but it could also thwart President Biden's domestic agenda and will likely subject his White House to many, many investigations. We will see. The people have a say in all of this. Amazon has confirmed it has begun laying off employees. They plan to cut around 10,000, joining Meta, which has announced 11,000 job cuts, everybody. At UVA, the student accused of killing 3 UVA football players was denied bail on Wednesday as chilling new details emerged. The suspect was on a field trip with his classmates, fellow UVA students, to see a play in Washington, D.C., and when the bus returned to Charlottesville, the home of UVA, the 22-year-old opened fire on the bus, killing the 3 players, one of whom was asleep. Oh, it breaks your heart. President Biden responded to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's claim that a Ukrainian missile was not responsible for a deadly explosion in Poland on Tuesday that killed 2 people. But according to President Biden and other sources, that's not the evidence. It's just not true. He told reporters at the White House, and I quote, "That's not the evidence," after returning from the G20 summit in Bali. Polish officials say that it is likely that a Ukrainian missile deployed by its air defenses amid waves of Russian missile attacks fell inside the Polish territory. And those are some of the headlines. Yale and Harvard's law school will not be participating in the U.S. News and World Report rankings of best law schools because they are criticizing the publication's methodology, arguing that the list actively perpetuates disparities in law schools. What do you think about that, everybody? Everybody looks at Harvard and Yale, but I tell you what, if you want to learn how to argue, you better go to Howard. You better go to North Carolina Central. You better find out where Willie Gary went to school, because there's no finer litigator than Willie Gary, who produced the finest litigator of her generation, attorney C.K. Hoffler. I don't know where they get all their measurements from, but I tell you what, I'll take you and Willie Gary, attorney C.K. Hoffler, joining you, attorney Mark Fancher. Please, girl, get out of here. I look at these ratings. I'm like, really? No, when I'm in trouble, C.K. and Willie Gary. That's who I want. Thank you very much. That's okay. So, and then of course we've got attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian lawyer, and of course you've got to get his book, The Negroes of Friends Village. The Negroes of Friends Village. It is fascinating. Attorney Robert Patillo, Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, of course from Rainbow Push, and of course attorney C.K. Hoffler is the chair of Rainbow Push, legal analyst on Court TV. And Southeastern Regional Director from Rainbow Push, Attorney Robert Patillo. Mouthful. I know that you are running, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, but reacting to what we've been hearing, we've been talking about, I wanted to get these numbers about President Trump out. Why have I wanted to get them out? Because number one, I believe in dealing in truth, okay? And I want us to know what we're fighting. Because now he has people in place. He has very methodically put people in place so that he can build a political juggernaut. That is what he's doing. If we don't understand that, CK, we understand nothing. We understand nothing. You can't run people for office piecemeal. You have to have an organization. That is what Mayor Daley taught us in Chicago, boss. He literally had Chicago sewn up block by block. He had people who were in charge of every block, and then every 4 blocks, and then every neighborhood, every precinct. That's why you couldn't get anything done, really, until Jesse Jackson in Chicago, if you wanted to be independent, because the Democrats locked this city up. And even though it's by razor-thin margins, CK, a win is a win. It is what it is. So, but we're also looking at Georgia. So, you know what, in a couple of minutes, if you can kind of take us there, help us to understand what we're looking at.
Absolutely, Santita. And thank you for your kind comments about, Willie, who is the best, most extraordinary trial lawyer of all time. And he went to North Carolina Central Law School. So I have to
And like I said, if I'm in trouble,
right?
CK fully disclosed. She's my lawyer, and and my family, and so is Uncle Willie. So there you go. And I feel very, very secure when we walk in a courtroom with CK and with Willie Gary. We are fine. We cross our legs and just thank God for the best. Seriously, they are the best.
Okay. Thank you. Well, what we're seeing is, of course, we have to remember Republicans took the House of Representatives, and that's very significant because they're going to launch every single investigation, including if they can figure out a way of starting an impeachment process of President Biden, they will do that too. But everything from the Justice Department to Hunter Biden to every single thing that President Biden has done, they're going to try to investigate. And they've got the votes to be able to do some damage. That's number one. But number two, and so what does that mean? That means that they did prevail throughout this country on some level. Now they lost on some level too. They expected to have a complete sweep throughout the country. That didn't happen, but they did win on some level. And we have to be very, very careful about that. Again, I live in Georgia. If you just look at Georgia and look at where they are, Herschel Walker barely, I mean, we got a runoff. He barely lost in terms of number of votes to Raphael Warnock, who is an incumbent, who has had a successful journey in the U.S. Senate. And we don't even waste our breath on qualifications because we don't need to waste our breath on that. But here yet, Senator Raphael Warnock is fighting for his life in the U.S. Senate. That should let us know that it ain't over till it's over. And Herschel Walker is a 100% Trump-backed candidate. And that is a very close race. And that's now when the Democrats have the White House.
Yeah, but who discusses vampires?
2 years from now.
Who discusses vampires
right.
in speech?
I mean, it just goes from bad to worse. I mean, it's just the silliest stuff I've ever seen. But that just tells you where we are. And that's now. 2 years from now, in 2024, it's going to be on. So in 2022, even though the economy's bad, Biden's ratings are low and all that kind of stuff, in 2024, they've got really 2 years to amp this up, to work on the communities. And if the Democrats don't use excessive measures to reach out and address the discontent and the sense of despair that many in this country have, especially with Black folks, Black and brown communities, then they will lose the battle. They may have won this. They may have won the battle with the Senate right now, but they will lose the war in 2024. And that's the stage that I see. So we have to be on our P's and Q's. This is not the time to rest on any laurels. It's not the time. Nobody's doing a victory dance per se. Nancy Pelosi is not going to be Speaker of the House. I mean, we're not going to enjoy some of the things that we enjoyed in the House of Representatives up until this point. And that is going to be significant. But the good news is, if Raphael Warnock does win, and I'm claiming that victory, that will neutralize the Manchin Cinema situation and make it better. And all of these people who are sitting in the queue, many of them who I supported when I was president of the National Bar Association to be elevated to the federal bench, may get confirmed. How about that? All those people who are in the queue that are waiting for confirmation and can't get on the agenda to be confirmed because of all the blockage.
That's where we are. And Tracy Lewis has weighed in. DeSantis is the GOP favorite. Trump's biggest two donors dropped out. We should focus on our own stuff. And a lot of your comments are along those lines, and I appreciate that. But this is our own stuff. If you do not, I'm a musician, and I not only need to know my part, I need to know what the drummer's doing. I need to know what the pianist is doing, what the bassist is doing, what the guitarist is doing. I need to know the whole band if you're going to be great at this. Because you might sing a note that might be in contravention of what they're doing. The same thing goes for politics. You need to know what's happening all around the landscape, which does not mean you lose your focus and step away from your base and registering your voters. But you need to know what's going on all over the place. All over you must know all the pieces. If you play chess, you look at every piece on that chessboard because they all are mitigating factors in your game. You got to know everything. So I'm not focusing on Trump. I'm not Trump obsessed. If you listen to the body of my show over the past 3 years, I have barely mentioned his name. unlike the corporate media who mention him every day and they've kept him in the mix. But you can't hear about a civil rights leader or someone who's fighting for you on corporate media on any day. No, they're going to tell you that they're trying to imprison Bernie Sanders' wife. They're going to give you that. But these other jokers, you've got to hear about them every day. So the criticism that you have, you need to give to corporate media because they are misshaping our perceptions and they're hurting us. They really are. Mark Fancher, talk to me. What are your thoughts? I mean, we've been talking about these real numbers. Of course, Reverend Dr. Uri got us in trouble yesterday because he did that and people got upset. That he said, Trump really has been winning 88 to 90% of the races that his people have been in. That's at Ballotpedia. Those are just the numbers, everybody. And then we're looking at voter suppression in Georgia. I mean, they are not allowing you to vote on Saturdays when many, if not most people are off.
About that?
Yeah,
Can I just say something about that? That is really quick. Just that is absolutely crazy. Again, I live in Georgia. That is perhaps one of the greatest examples of voter suppression.
Oh my gosh.
And so when people start thinking about what it is, here you have it. That's an example.
Well, I mean, that Brian Kemp and the Secretary of State put in place. So when you talk about, when we talk about Stacey Abrams and what she's been able to do and what she's been fighting, this is it, right?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And I want to applaud Stacey Abrams again. She did not win, but I want to applaud her because if there's one leader in Georgia who has single-handedly made a difference in the fabric of voting and liberty, it is Stacey Abrams.
She didn't lose, though.
And so
she didn't win that office. But she didn't lose.
She didn't win that office. No. She didn't lose the war. She just lost the battle. Oh, she didn't lose the war at all.
She didn't lose. She didn't lose. History is going to show you that she won. History is showing you Reverend Jackson has won. Dr. King won. Keep your office. I'm going to keep doing my mission, which is bigger than an office. Y'all got it. I'm going to keep trying to win these offices. But I'd rather lose on a winning proposition than win on a losing one. When I say that, I mean, hey, if it's not right, I'm not going to win doing the wrong thing and standing for the wrong thing because we all lose. They got it. They got it. Attorney Mark Fancher, talk to us. What are we looking at?
Well, I think I'm on the same page as you with respect to the importance of electoral offices and the priority that we should give them, which I don't think ranks up there. Even when the system works the way it's supposed to work, it has been rigged in a way that it will protect the interests of those who are wealthy, major corporations, those who dominate the society, and it will work to the disadvantage of those who are oppressed, those who've been excluded, and those who've been marginalized, even when it's working properly. And when it's not working properly and somehow these groups that have been excluded or marginalized manage to make inroads, then the system can be tampered with, adjusted, using different devices such as voter suppression in order to restore the proper functioning of the system, which is to keep people who are powerless. And so I don't personally spend very much time or energy thinking about electoral politics, involving myself in it, or being concerned about it because I regard it as a sham, as a charade. And I just don't have much time for it. Not that I believe that people should disregard opportunities that it presents to obtain certain advantages or to move people forward in some way when those opportunities present themselves. But I'm not very concerned about it. And, even when we fall into the mode of thinking that the system wants us to fall into, which is to accept the great American myth, the great capitalist myth that individuals make history, then we put ourselves at an even greater disadvantage. And part of that is looking at situations like Donald Trump's situation and presuming that he is the individual who is responsible for everything that's happening, that he is the individual who, if he is defeated, if he is contained, will resolve many of the problems that we see, that is a tragic error. And I don't spend much time worrying about Trump, the individual. I am more concerned about the phenomenon that he reflects. I'm more concerned about the broad mass of primarily white workers who have reached a state of panic, who are experiencing self-imposed trauma that at the base is the result of racial thinking. These are people. This is a population which, from the beginning from the earliest days of this country, have been pulled into a white nationalist way of thinking. They've been made, that promises have been made to them that they will always enjoy a certain white privilege that is denied to other groups, that they will always have opportunities even if they don't have present day advantage, that their children will enjoy a quality of life that they can't enjoy if they're not able to enjoy it now. And these people feel very much betrayed because they have not experienced, at least they don't perceive that they have experienced, the type of advantage that has been promised to them. They look and they see things that disturb them greatly, whether it's the election of Barack Obama, the high visibility of people of color in the media, and then you add to that the lies that are told to them by demagogues like Trump about the fact that their troubles, their financial troubles, their social troubles, their political troubles, that all of these things are caused by these groups which have historically been marginalized and excluded, by people of color, by communities of color, by other people who have been historically oppressed. And they get very, very angry. And so that all that Trump, the individual, does is to tap into that anger and to misdirect it in destructive ways. And so I think that the priority must be focusing on these populations. And I don't know that oppressed communities, people of color, are the ones who are appropriate to do that. We have our own problems, our own challenges, our own issues. And if this country is to make it through what I believe is an imminent violent conflict and crisis, then it falls to progressive forces in the white community to take a lead in working with these people, clarifying for them the issues, helping them to understand how the system really works, and identifying for them their true enemies, which are major corporations which have taken their jobs away overseas, major corporations which have limited their opportunities for education and healthcare, major corporations which have exploited opportunities to make massive profits off the backs of working people and poor people. Once they understand these things, we hope that rational thinking will prevail. But I have to tell you, I believe that what many of them are experiencing is a form of mass psychosis for which there is no cure.
Mic drop on that. So what do you think, everybody? Going to have Dr. Max Wolf coming up, but want to hear what you have to say, Reverend Dr. Todd Urey. Want to hear what you have to say, Robert Patillo. Want to hear, I wish you could stay with us, CK. When are you going to be on Court TV? Are you still there? She might be gone.
She just dropped.
Okay, well, John, you look out for her on Court TV, everybody, and tell them that you want to see more of CK Hoffler on Court TV as a brilliant legal analyst. Let's talk about election 2024. Let's talk about what's happening in Georgia. You cannot vote on Saturdays. I mean, this is what we're beginning to, we were so excited to see all these people jumping out to vote, and that was so important. But now you're beginning to see voter suppression. Now you're beginning to see voter restrictions. That's what you're going to see in these next couple of weeks. Wow. But you got to vote anyway. You got to vote anyway. You must vote. Don't let these people do this to you. Don't play. They're not playing with you. Don't you play with them. Get out here and vote. It's your country. Not two. It's your country. Act like it. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. All right, people. Keep talking. Do you have a reaction, Reverend Dr. Urey, Robert Patillo, to what you just heard from Attorney Mark Fancher, the flamethrower? Hello.
I don't know. There's a flamethrower. I think there's an important critique and the analysis there, and I think Attorney Fancher's kind of laid out the contours of why you see disaffected groups disengaging from politics and apathy kind of setting in because there is no real ability to place confidence in a governmental system that prioritizes the distribution of public resources for prioritized needs. When you're at the bottom of the wish list and not even on the list in some instances, it is hard to say that it's my job to now vote for folks that no matter who I pick and no matter what they say their ideological alignment might be, when it comes to the primary function of government, which is the distribution of public resources to meet certain needs, I'm always going to be at the end of that list. And if I don't get to be more engaged about my own sense of agency in resolving my own problems, then to Attorney Fancher's point, right, insanity and psychosis begins to set in because now I've created a dependency for myself.
Attorney Patillo, you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh boy. So where are we? We're about to bring on Dr. Wolf. I mean, where do you see us being right now?
Is that a question for everyone? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Always glad to have you. I'm sorry, I fell asleep before I could reach out to you and ask you what you wanted to talk about. But we've been talking about these elections, Dr. Wolf, and everybody is just this is just kind of sort of where we are right now. And so I'm grateful that you can make these turns. Thank God for that.
Well, always a pleasure to try. Thanks for having me.
Always know it's you. Okay. And so I see we've got a couple of callers who want to weigh in, so we're going to do that. Okay. Okay, you all can keep talking. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do something that is show related. Okay. Everyone, I've got Dr. Max Wolf with us, the brilliant economist, but you all know that. And we've got we've got Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, the pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore. Indeed, his immediate predecessor is Senator Warnock. And of course, he is from Rainbow Push. And we've got Attorney Robert Patillo, Rainbow Push, and he is also host of his own show on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. It's a great, great show. And of course, Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian lawyer and author of the book, The Negroes of Friends Village. You need to get it. It really is fascinating. He's a brilliant writer, essayist. Every time I see that he's
Ms.
got
Jackson,
something. Yes.
We have about 10 seconds.
Okay.
So stand by.
Okay.
I have Dr. Wolf and Miss Wells is on. She would like to be on and comment.
Meet you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Stand by.
Good to be with you.
Stand by, everybody.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
And hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking about former President Trump's true numbers. He's won a lot of races up and down the ballot. And I think we need to know that. Don't be disheartened by it. Just know it. Know what kind of arm yourself for the fight, everybody. And let's make sure that we're not just fighting for our side, but fighting for the right side, fighting for the truth, fighting to make sure that everyone, however we vote, has food, clothing, and shelter, an opportunity for education. equal access to equal high quality education and the vote. Everyone, I don't care what your political stripe is, you should be covered by the vote. Some basic things that as Americans we need to be fighting for. We need to grow up in our politics and do that. Because if I get hurt, eventually you're going to get hurt. If I get helped, eventually you're going to get helped. Think about that. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. That's my home, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. If you're looking for financial freedom, I want you to get it, everybody. From Team Hochberg, call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, and go to 56david.com. Tom and Sonia, they had $100,000 in credit card debt and 17 credit cards, a mortgage they were barely keeping up with, and they could not get a loan. They reached out to Team Hochberg and they got a free consultation, and guess what happened? This is what happened. They were able to have Team Hochberg negotiate with the credit card companies, bring down their payments by over $2,800 a month, and they saved their homes. They were able to secure a loan for them. That could be you, everybody. If you need a reverse mortgage or find out what it is, if you want to bring down your credit cards, if you're using your debit card, you really shouldn't be. You need to get a credit card, but you need a plan. If you need to get your credit together, you need a plan. Team Hochberg can help you. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Go on and let them help you become financially free. So let's get right to it. What is going on with Election 24? What's happening in Georgia? In Georgia, no Saturday voting. We're seeing voter suppression. We were very, very excited as we were watching record turnout for the Georgia primary and then the Georgia election. But now this is where the rubber meets the road. Now there is no Saturday voting. There are fewer and fewer places where you can vote and fewer opportunities for you to vote. And you cannot get registered to vote. Say you got inspired by what happened November 8th. No, you can't get registered. There's no same day. No, none of that. No same day registration, none of that. So how is that going to impact the vote? And now that we no longer have the libertarian in the race, and libertarians notoriously skew right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Particularly after this bizarre vampire speech that Herschel Walker, it just seems it doesn't even matter what he says. People just want to hold on to that seat. Wow. So, of course, you know what time it is. It's time for Dr. Max Wolf, and of course, brilliant economist, and of course, cultural critic. And we've got Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire, Rainbow Push, and the pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore. We've got the author of The Negroes of Friends Village, brilliant civil libertarian and lawyer, attorney Mark Fancher. And we have got, of course, Robert Patillo from Rainbow Push. WAOK is his radio station. He'll be on from 1 to 4 every Sunday, this Sunday, Eastern Standard Time. And boy, oh boy, we've got a full house. Before we come to you, Dr. Wolf, about what we've been seeing over the past few days, and this media narrative that continues to paint Trump as a loser, as someone who is losing voters, as opposed to someone who is getting people elected to office. Let's get this call from Chaparral. And Chaparral, you just had to call back, didn't you?
I did, Santita, because of the fact that, I hear everyone talking about Republicans. But this issue has always been a Democrat issue. What are we going to do as Democrats? What is Biden going to do in these next couple of weeks? I talked about it yesterday after the show. What is he going to do since he knows he has lost the House? What is he going to do? Is he going to issue those executive orders? Is he going to do the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? Is he going to shore up Civil Rights Act? Is he going to try to do something for student loan debt relief? What is he going to do? Is he going to expand the court? What is he going to do? We have until January to make something happen. Else we're going to have 2 years of just, stalemate. And nothing is going to get done. They're going to run all these phony crises about who stole the election and all the stuff. We're going to go through all that. So I'm tired of talking about the Republicans. It is what it is. They've already made their plan. What is the Democratic plan? So that's what I like to hear what the panel is going to, what they think Biden should be doing, what they think Nancy Pelosi should be doing, what they think the Senate should be doing. What should we be trying to get through before January?
Well, absolutely, before January. But that's what. But we continue. We're not just talking about the Republicans, Shapiro. We're trying to help the public to understand the landscape. As we hear the corporate media give us a particular message about how badly Trump is doing, it's just not true. So I want us to be armed for this fight, because believe me, these are numbers that Nancy Pelosi has. These are numbers that Chuck Schumer has, and they govern accordingly. And we need to know all of that. You can't be in a band if you do not know, as the drummer, what the pianist needs to play, the bassist, the guitarist, and anyone else. You got to know. And if you are a background singer, as I have been, for heaven's sake, you better know what the person above you and below you's got to sing. You got to know it all. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess. So why don't you, let's start with you, Dr. Wolf. Talk to us.
To me, look, Trump was always a media narrative. Most people, there's a balance of substance and sort of sizzle. There has never been substance there. There's a little nasty little kernel that's not going to appeal to almost anyone. So he was always dependent on that media hype of making him front and center. When the story changes, it's a big deal to him because there really isn't anything else, which is the risk of being that guy. So, if you're going to blow around on the breeze goes north, you go north. The breeze goes south, you go south, right? I do think that he has been stomping around in the Republican Party saying that whether they like him or not, they have to listen to him because he's the sort of big shot caller. And there has been this notion, which was always a gross exaggeration, of his ability to pick winners and losers in elections, right? And that narrative has changed more than the reality because it was exaggerated to one side. Now it will be exaggerated to the other. It is true, though, that in sort of contested states, purple states, the more extremist voices haven't done that well. And I think people thought that in the Republican Party, you could get huge turnout and carry the day nationally on the sort of apologia for the failed coup of January 6th, and also the sort of really getting people whipped into a red hot frenzy around who won the election. That makes a certain sense because the standard strategy of a midterm is whoever can get their people to show up in a low turnout context wins. What's interesting is the turnout wasn't so low, and that strategy therefore failed because you had a large number of people showing up. And it wasn't just the sort of most extreme, most agitated voices, right? Because that was the policy of Trump, and because he did back a lot of those candidates, for a person who's been sort of swinging it around like he could call the outcomes, it was a pretty humiliating day. I also think since the Trump presidency is an artifice of a media that was excited about getting ratings by putting a buffoon in front of everyone to choose, they now want to tell the story of the swan song of the buffoon. So, live by that sword, die by that sword. So it sort of seems like maybe the buffoonery that worked in the past has lost some of its appeal, or we'll find new buffoons. And if you want new buffoons, you go to the Georgia Senate race and you have a new buffoon. And although it was close, because I think Trump's Mar-a-Lago bizarre year early adding himself to the race decision, which probably wasn't about the race anyway, did give Herschel Walker a run for its money in terms of the pure eloquence of the conversation. Still, it's not as good. So it's not going to be the buffoon du jour.
Well, we'll see. What's your response? Attorney Robert Patillo, your thoughts?
Well, I think that people have to make sure you take the right lessons away from this midterm. I'll give you an example of in Virginia, when Republicans, Glenn Youngkin won, the Republican Party took that as a sign that people were really, really interested in critical race theory and parental rights and education and raiding the school boards, banning books, etc. And then this became the kind of the snake eating its own tail, becoming more and more extreme. When the reality was it's a repudiation of Terry McAuliffe and being a retread candidate. And by misreading that, they set Republican policy for the midterms based upon that misreading of the outcome. which ultimately doomed them for this midterm, contributing towards the poor showing that they did see. I think for Democrats, they need to understand when they look at this, the outcomes of this race, that young voters are significant. They are important. You cannot forget them. When you talked about student loan reform, you took the first step. You have to take this across the finish line if you want to have that continued support from millennials and Gen Z. When you look at African American voters, there's no reason for the Voting Rights Act and for criminal justice reform to not be number one on the list of things to get done, because you can consistently push their issues back and back and back and continue to get 90% of the vote. But that's starting to slip, and those things slip away if you not attend to the garden, as it would be. I think that if they can get out of their own way, get out of just the D.C., L.A., New York consulting class, invest more in grassroots and street-level campaigning, less than television ads that run incessantly, there's a very good chance of making pickups in the 2024 election. But if not, this could turn the other way very quickly. We've seen this happen in Europe consistently over the course of the last 5 years or so. There's a very fine balance between the neo-fascist parties in most Western democracies and kind of the more socially progressive parties in those nations.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are today. I mean, talk to us, Reverend Dr. Yeary. I mean, particularly, bend this toward Georgia. I mean, because people have fewer and fewer opportunities and places where they can vote. I mean, and times. This is where the rubber's going to meet the road for Senator Warnock and Citizen Walker, but particularly for Raphael Warnock.
Well, elections are all about ground game, right? So at the end of the day, it's one thing to have a compelling message. It's another thing to have a core base of voters who respond to that message in a more direct way, casting a ballot. So this is going to come down to what happens within the window around December the 6th, and whether or not, I think the law says the early voting window begins as soon as possible. It's an arbitrary date, and so there's a lot of uncertainty. So you have to be ready to engage. You have to have your folks ready to vote. And the challenge in this time is you can't start too soon, because if that intensity wanes, then your turnout tends to lag. That's one. The second thing is that elections are not rational exercises. And so while we're trying to speak to the sensibilities of an electorate, elections are really emotional exercises. It is how do you tap into the passions, the fears, the insecurities of folks to cause them to want to be a part of the solution to what ails them. And so if we continue to have this, it's governing that's rational. It's governing where you have to be reasonable and compromise. Elections, and this is what Donald Trump has gotten, I think, a baseline understanding of. He does not have to make sense in an election. As a matter of fact, because elections tend to be countersensical or nonsensical, if he speaks to the fears, he woke up a disaffected group of folks who had sat out, and he taught them how to what we call single shoot. If they didn't know anything else that was on that ballot after the presidency, because the presidency was going to be at the top of the ballot, it didn't even matter, because once he got in, it was going to give him the license to maneuver public resources, to control the military, to control the narrative, to have an audience before the people every single day, have a crew of reporters with offices in his basement and places out on the lawn, always waiting to see what he may or may not say or do. That this election, this thing that we have to get folks to understand, and I hear Chappelle's frustration. I hate to tell her that once you have divided government, more than likely, you're not going to get the intense substantive change around legislation that you would want, because you don't have the numbers. And we did not have the numbers the first 2 years. 50-50 is not a majority when you got two people in your caucus who may go rogue. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to move what you can until you can get better numbers, which is why the Georgia race is so critical. Imagine going through another 2 years with Manchin and Sinema seat coming up in 2024, trying to hold 50-50 together so that you don't have to turn the gavel over to Mitch McConnell. Imagine if you go in 50-50 and Manchin shifts, decides he wants to be an independent and caucus with the Republicans, then Mitch McConnell gets the gavel. Now you've got the Republicans doing all kinds of whatever they want to do. Then you got a different kind of play. So you got to play to your passions. Win by 1 point if you have to, not because you choose to, but everybody's got to get engaged, because at the end of the day, elections are not about common sense. Elections are about concerns, and those tend to be emotionally driven.
Well, let me pivot back to you before I go to you, Attorney Fancher. I mean, Dr. Wolf, what is our takeaway? Because the reason I bring Trump up, and I haven't brought him, I don't really bring him up. I don't even mention his name. Everybody else does. And I always felt that, I was always taught that you don't give your opponent that much air. But you also need to give your soldiers on the ground the right information. And I just don't think we're being given the right information, and we're not having the right discussions. I think that what should be top of mind today, given the fact that we so desperately need this seat in Georgia. And I mean, we need Raphael Warnock for so many reasons. Not to talk about voter suppression now, to me, is dangerous, is short-sighted, because the voters in Georgia need the assistance.
The voters in Georgia also have a chance to do something about voter suppression way beyond the borders of Georgia, because the balance of Congress has more than a little to do with what policies are allowed to stand. Also, the Senate does appoint these judges, and the judges that have been getting through the Senate have not taken a particularly protective stance toward voting rights. Right? So these things are not, I don't think you can disentangle these things so easily, right? So who gets elected in a nearly divided Senate, and what kind of judges end up in seats actually is not an unrelated series of events, right? I think that's a big one. I also think the country, to me, and this is maybe a tone you hear a lot, but that notwithstanding, pretty divided. You have a lot of people who still voted for basically their own economic annihilation and are really angry. And they're going to keep voting for it until they're gone, and they're going to keep blaming someone else. So I think that's probably just a group of people that's going to be very difficult to engage. I think the economic sort of situation is deteriorating pretty quickly. I think we're seeing that the prices are coming down. This is going to be good news to a lot of people. And they're coming down the way they always do, because we're going to have a lot less economic growth, possibly a recession. The indebtedness numbers that we're starting to get are pretty serious, right? But I think there's another lesson that always goes unsaid, which we should mention, which is the Democratic Party always gets millions and millions and millions more votes,
yes,
which it did again, right? And just like they do now in the presidency. So the Republicans are mad in part because when they lose, when they get a lot fewer votes, they usually get the office. They're not as crazy as you might think. They're shocked at having gotten 7 or 8 million fewer votes. They didn't actually take the seat, because they usually do. So the other thing to look at when we see a midterm or when we see a presidential election that's closely contested like this one is how well these ideas that really are decimating the American white working class, which is blaming, trans children and bathroom policies and people of color and immigrants and whatever else, is your lizards, or people who don't listen to Q or whatever it is, right? And it runs the range from reasonable to pretty far out there, right? It's a big range. They're going to keep being mad. So the question is what their weight is in the decision, not changing their minds, because that's probably a long shot. So what their weight in the decision is, let's look at it. Why do states with no one in them effectively get to vote many, many times as much as states with people in them? Because this is an urban-rural story as much as anything else. And this is a sort of, I think it might be time that we have a democracy where people vote, not land. And we kind of have land voting. And that's left over from the upper classes drawing their wealth from the ownership of land. And it is virulently anti-democratic.
So much of our society is. I mean, Reverend Jackson has said, you must first understand that America is a right-wing nation. And when we understand that, then you know how to fight here. You have to understand that the movements are going to come from the left for real. Movement might come from the right, but the movements are going to come from the left. And they're going to really move you. Your aspirations are left wing, everybody. They have to be. If you want to eat, if you believe that everybody needs to eat and deserves to eat, that's a left wing proposition. That's not right wing. If you believe everybody deserves food, clothing, and shelter, Mark Fancher, That's from the left. That's not from the right. So, we have to grow up in our politics. I first heard you say that some years ago, Dr. Wolf, and I thought it was so brilliant because we really, really do. Attorney Fancher, I've got about 90 seconds for you.
Yeah, I frequently reach conclusions that are very, out of step with conventional thinking because I start from a place that's very different. Many people are in a desperate, panicked frenzy and desire for democratic victory. I have no use for the Democratic Party. I have no use for the Republican Party. They're both capitalist parties, and I would like to see both of them eliminated. And so, when I consider that in terms of candidates or politicians, I have no use for a politician who is going to be a conventional Democrat. The only politicians that are worthwhile in my eyes are those who are trying to break out of that paradigm, who are pushing the envelope, who are doing everything that they can within the system to try and undermine it. And so when you think about that, I don't even place that much importance on the Georgia race because what it means is that even if Raphael Warnock wins election, that what he will have is a constituency which is extremely polarized. 50% of them are right-wing crazy, and 50% of them are progressive. And what does he do with that? If he chooses to be the kind of politician I like, then it means that he is going to, the next time he's up for election, be in the exact same position he's in now, where he's fighting for his life, and he may not even make it to the next election. If he tries to appease that 50% that's on the extreme right, then he becomes just another conventional Democratic politician. So, in terms of setting priorities, mine are somewhat different from what many people may think is necessary, but that's where I come down on this.
Okay, well, I got the last minute or so belongs to you, Reverend. Excuse me, I was about to keep trying to make you a reverend. Maybe it's because Thea, your baby, is so devout. We're going to bring you along, Dr. Wolf.
So the tree has deviated from the apple, I guess. But
she's beautiful.
But look, to me, thank you very much. I mean, to me, I don't think you can separate these things. So while there are certainly lots of problems and shortcomings of all the parties and systems that we have in place, we have to live under those systems, at least for the near-term future, and how we live and if we live is sometimes in the balance. So I do think there's also a symbolic value to saying no to some candidates. I think Herschel Walker might be the type of candidate it's important to say no to on a number of levels. And I think it's also a very deep symbolic and potential social meaning to saying yes to certain types of candidates. I think Senator Warnock might be that type of candidate who it's important to say yes to. And it's also important to get through the obstacles, impediments, and difficulties and make your voice heard, even if it's limited. It shouldn't be your only political interaction, but it's a place to start, and it's a pretty tangible. It's a chance to go and join people who believe what you believe and oppose what you oppose and see if you can win a fight and win a round. And while it might be a battle and not the war, it's still important to win as many of those battles as you can.
Well, I want you all to stay with me. I know, Dr. Wolf, you're going to have to leave and have a hard out 5 minutes after the hour, but I want to get some closing thoughts from you, Attorney Patel, and you, Reverend Dr. Yeary, Esquire, and from you, Attorney Fancher, because, as my father says about religion, I'm from a deeply religious family. He says we live in our faith for sure, but we live under the law. Remember, Jesus lived in his faith, but he was killed because it was lawful to do so. He was killed by the state. So I think we have to have the proper balance, and we need to listen to each other. That's why I try to have all of these different voices, because somewhere between all of us, we're going to come up with some answers that are going to really make the society great. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless. Thank you, Jewel, for the great show. All right, everybody. I want to get some closing thoughts or some thoughts from you. Robert Patillo, Reverend Dr. Yeary. You have anything further you'd like to add?
Well, I think that this is where the pressure has to actually start from the community, because what we've seen continuously is that African American issues get pushed to the back burner by Democrats once they're back in power. During the election, you're the backbone of the party, you're the soul of the party, you're the most important part of the party.
You better get out and vote, because if I lose, it's going to be your fault.
Exactly. But then for somehow when it comes to voting rights and criminal justice reform, oh, dang, my bad, we ran out of time this time, maybe next season. I think this is when the pressure has to start to make sure they remember where the bread got buttered at and what things need to be done immediately, because otherwise, the closer we get to 2024, the fewer things that will get done.
Well, and we're gonna have to talk about Karen Bass tomorrow if you can join me, because that is a huge win for her, as we watched all Kim Kardashian and the head of Netflix and a lot of Black Hollywood endorsed the white Republican who became the independent, who became the Democrat. They did not support Karen Bass, but she did. She prevailed, and she is now going to be the first Black woman to be the mayor of Los Angeles. More than that, she was head of the California Assembly. She was the speaker. She's a progressive. And she's zeroing in on homelessness, everybody, which is a massive problem everywhere. But when you're in LA, you see them everywhere. You see just people who don't have shelter everywhere. And that is something that she said she is going to solve. So I'm very, very excited about that. But Reverend Dr. Yuri, your thoughts?
Well, I think my thoughts are, we get so enamored by chasing the big shiny thing in D.C. that I think we miss a tremendous opportunity to impact political outcomes because we disengage from local and state engagement in politics. Very often, if you really want to leverage policies, most of what affects our lives are state laws with local implementation that kind of determines how we navigate. But it's also the place where you see the deepest apathy and significant disengagement. Few folks want to go to council meetings. Few folks want to engage around state laws. We got to remember this trend toward legalization of cannabis is not a federal movement. It is a state movement. States have gone there. What happens with whether your streets get paved or whether or not you get broadband in your local area. A lot of that is going to come down to local and state impact, not necessarily what's going to happen at the top. What happens at the top, though, is really about who's going to deploy and how that money is going to be used that flows from the federal government through the states to the local governments. Hence, you see how President Biden came out with the American Rescue Plan as step one, and then the infrastructure bill as step two. So that becomes an indicator of how we see government working. But if you really want to get to a real civics lesson, all you got to do is get a handful of folks from your neighborhood block to go to the council meeting and sit in the chamber unannounced without having anything particular on the agenda. And I promise you, every local elected official is going to wonder why you are there, because they're so accustomed to doing what they do with no engagement whatsoever. And it is probably the most impactful way that folks who feel they have no voice can find their voice and really make a change.
Amen to that. Dr. Wolf, before you go? Or did you sign up?
Local matters. Yeah, so clearly the local has a deep impact, and a lot of what people do does come from the state and local enforcement, true. But I think I would be careful about an either or, and I know that's not what's being said, but the federal also matters, because one of the odd things about America's obsession with state and local politics, rhetorically, is that all the money for those state and local politics does come from the federal government. So those federal apportionments, these people who give these impassioned speeches about how they hate D.C., they're always in a red state where the state gets about 80% of its operating revenue from Washington, D.C.
Washington.
So these things do kind of interact with each other, right? So all those bold programs that you love because you think your state is so efficient, right? It's just that your state is not sending any money to Washington, D.C., but living off of remittances from Washington, D.C., like Florida or Texas do, which pay very little to D.C. and take tens of billions of dollars more out and then pass nasty judgments about the legality needs of places like New York and Massachusetts and California, which send all the money to Washington, D.C. that those states spend, which is why the taxes are lower. Right? So I do think absolutely true, but I think the even sort of fringe right has done very well, taking over school boards and select boards and towns where there was often very little activity. So they were often able to more or less march in unopposed. And that's a good point, and it has had big impact on the country. And you see that sometimes with these issues about books and book bans and critical race theory, where the kind of a very small number of pretty marginal voices can whip up a pretty big frenzy, and it can kind of wildfire across different geographies very quickly, and also largely unopposed until it's kind of major as an event.
So are you paying attention to December 6th in Georgia?
For sure. You have to be, right? I mean, it's pretty big deal. And even if it's just about making minutia and cinema, now they have to both go against the Democratic Party with the extra 1 vote margin. That's the odd thing about one seat in a divided Senate, is it actually has a pretty big impact.
It really, really does. We need that seat. And guess what? Republicans need it too, but the people need it more. That's the point. Dr. Wolf, sending you much, 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 much love. I always want you to come back.
Always a pleasure. Always learn from the other panelists too. So thanks for your patience, and thanks for teaching me something each week. Thank you. Thanks, bye.
I love my Max. I love it. You know what? I want us to pivot back to Georgia, particularly tomorrow, because Attorney Patillo, we need to know what we need to do to win there. You know, I mean, what is the GOTV? What is that going to look like? Getting out the vote with all of these restrictions.
Well, I think what we're going to have to see is a more well-coordinated ground game between the Warnock people and the state and national parties. For all the talk about voter registration and record turnout and the early voting, what we saw in Georgia was Democratic vote share dropped by almost 200,000 from 2018 to 2022. They're going to take a real investment needed to make sure you turn those numbers around if you want to give Warnock opportunity to beat Herschel Walker, or else we'll have vampires in the Senate and we'll have no one else to blame but ourselves.
Reverend Dr. Yuri. The vampires.
Yeah. So there's the strategy that comes from within the party structure. But I think GOTV often overlooks the grassroots mobilization that happens from local organizations. And I think what we have to do is, if we're supporting GOTV, if we're really trying to drive it, we really need to direct our dollars to those local grassroots organizations that are doing GOTV, so they have the resources they need to be on the ground, mobilizing in those places that are often overlooked intentionally, because they're not the typical voter, like the likely voter that often comes up in a survey. If you're going to try to get the disaffected, if you're going to try to get those new voters, you need really to connect with grassroots organizations that are focused like a laser to mobilize those demographics, to bring them in. Otherwise, the math does not come out in your favor. The only way you're going to turn this out is you got to get those who have been sitting out and those who are just getting in, just aging in, get those high school students, those college students. That's where we targeted actually in the runoff when Rainbow Push was partnering with organizations 2 years ago. We actually, in the middle of COVID, we focused on digital outreach. We drew circles. Robert Patillo and I looked at all of the zip codes for all of the colleges and the universities. We figured out the radius there. And we worked with partners who knew how to take that information and come up with a strategy to place targeted digital messaging in those areas to mobilize turnout going into the last runoff. If we don't think about how to get those who are either disaffected, meaning they're disappointed with what's not happening, the Chaparrals of the world, and our cousins, right? We got to get them. But we also have to get folks who are new to the process as your father did in 84 and 88, registering new voters and equipping them, because the only thing that's going to be on that December 6th ballot is one thing and one thing only. I don't think there's any other initiative that had to carry over, and that's going to be who's going to be the U.S. Senator from the state of Georgia. It's an easy election to understand. All we got to do is move the numbers, and I think Warnock then has a better than 50-50 shot of winning.
Well, Mark Fancher, just ideally, where do you think we need to go? Did Mark leave? We might have left. Well, you know what? I hope that tomorrow you all can return so that we can talk about the Georgia race, and focus in on what needs to be done to win. Because this is where we're seeing voter suppression and voter suppression writ large. This is where we see the laws that were signed into place. Now we're seeing the power of these laws. We were so, excited about, and we should have been, about the high voter turnout. But now you're going to see when you cannot vote. We're about to see all of those things. And so I hope that you can make some space for us tomorrow, Attorney Patello, if you can, and you, Reverend Dr. Todd Urey. Let me know if you can, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me know, because that's very, very important that we really look at that, okay?
Got it.
In the meantime, I'm sending you all so much love. Yes, you all have it all. All my love, all my love, all my love. Jewel, my gem, thank you so much for everything. And thank you, WCPT and AM 950 Radio, for the airtime, for the space. Love you all, everybody. Love you, love you. Morning stars, I love you, love you, love you. Love you, love you, love you. God bless. Have a great one.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.